I want to touch on the flooding situation happening in Texas as well as the missing people. There always seems to be a connection between not only a large catastrophic event such as climate change or something like that and missing children. In this event in Texas, we're told that there is almost 30 missing children as a result of this catastrophic, quote, climate change event. And what's interesting is they always seem to sort of frame the children who are faith-based. If you'll notice from the pictures, you can see that, they picture these children praying to God in heaven. They also picture children behind sort of an icon of a cross or something like that, which to me is a mockery because it seems to suggest that those of you that know anything about narcissistic tendencies, they have a tendency to project. And that's what it appears to be here. Now, I want to go through a series of videos and just kind of talk about the situation because there's a lot of anomalies in this report.
We have recorded 68 deceased in Kerr County. Among those who are deceased, we have 40 adults and 28 children. At present, there are 10 Camp Mystic campers unaccounted for and 1 counselor. We continue to offer our condolences to those affected, and we will work tirelessly till we reunite them with their families.
If you were to do a quick search on Google, you will find that there's been a number of cases of missing children in the last 30 days. In fact, in Ireland, it was reported that there were a number of missing children, missing babies. And then also in Tampa, recently there were over 60 that were recovered, surprisingly, but it was said to be one of the largest human trafficking sting operations in U.S. history, according to the news.
They're calling it Operation Dragon Eye, a massive 2-week operation that led to the rescue of more than 60 missing children across our region, many of them victims of human trafficking.
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen.
About 3 years ago, the movie Sound of Freedom came out, and I went to go look at it. And ever since I saw this movie, I don't seem to look at missing children the same anymore. And of course, the incident that happened in Texas, we're told that there were a number of missing children. The incident that happened in Lahaina, Hawaii, number of missing children never recovered. And even the fires in California, missing children never recovered. This all seems to be leading somewhere, and that's what I want to kind of talk about. Now, I'm going to kind of deal with this in segments, so I'm not going to really make my point in this video, but I'm going to have another video where hopefully I'll be able to make the point that a lot of these children are being, sad to say, they're being sort of sacrificed off or auctioned off for nefarious reasons, I'll say.
Good evening to you. I'm Tom Ziska. We're glad to have you with us. We begin with the continuing tragedy in Central Texas, where at least 78 people are dead across multiple counties in the Hill Country. We have team coverage for you tonight across Central Texas and here at Houston. Let's start with Fox 26's Anthony Antoine. He is live in Kerrville with the latest. Anthony.
I've been reading a book entitled The Great Controversy. This is actually the book cover here on the screen, and what a fascinating book. I mean, this book really identifies what I believe is happening today. In this book on page 589, notice the following quote, and this reminded me of the incident that happened in Texas, what's going on in Texas, as well as what's going on in various places around the world. It says there, the writer says, Satan works through the elements also to garner his harvest of unprepared souls. He has studied the secrets of the laboratories of nature, and he uses all in his power to control the elements as far as God allows. So here, this book is saying on page 589 that Satan actually can control the weather. The writer of this book refers to it as the elements of nature, or the secrets of the laboratory of nature. And what's interesting is this writer says that God only allows so much. So, and by the way, this book is available on Amazon.com. You can see here, just type in The Great Controversy Between Christ and Satan. Very fascinating book. When I think of what this writer says, as well as what's happening in Texas, I also think about the cloud seeding that's been reported. You know, for years, they never admitted that they were doing cloud seeding, and they never admitted that they were able to control nature and control the weather. But now it's coming out, and, you know, they're wanting to suggest the fact that they can only do it a little bit. They can't make big storms. All they can make is little storms and little bit of rain here and there just to kind of help farmers, you know. But my question is, if they can control the weather and make it rain, how come they weren't able to make it rain in California when we had the fires in California?
And finally tonight, in these confusing times, you might have seen posts or videos connecting cloud seeding to what is happening in Texas. And then earlier tonight, the CEO of a weather modification company confirmed that planes in Texas did release silver iode into the atmosphere 2 days before the floods. But he also explained why he says scientifically it does not mean that the two events are connected. Watch this.
We're talking about like sub-centimeter amounts of precipitation, be it in snow or rain from every event, which in aggregate can mean hundreds of acre feet, which is very consequential for farmers and ecosystems, but cannot come close to causing flooding unto itself.
Of course, they're not going to take the blame for being able to control the weather, especially in a storm. They're actually saying here that, you know, they can make a little rain, but they can't do a storm, right? But then they blame citizens, they blame us, the environment, for the flooding, climate change. They say if it weren't for fossil fuel, we wouldn't have the changes in the climate. But, you know, they're not going to take the blame when they cloud seed, which is a more advanced technology than even fossil fuel in the atmosphere.
And NBC News climate reporter Chase Kane joins us now. Chase, any conspiracy always starts with like a thread of truth here. Can you explain the science? Like, what is cloud seeding, first off, and how is it being used in Texas?
Yeah, so cloud seeding is really this idea for farmers of like, hey, there's some moisture up there in the clouds. Is there a way that we can get it out of the clouds down here to the surface to help farmers? Because water vapor that's in the air needs something to grab onto, which is often like smaller than the tip of a pen. So you're thinking like pollens, particles of pollen or dust or even air pollution. So you see this graphic here. Basically what they do is they fly planes up there to give the water vapor something to grab onto. So it's a combination of silver iodide and salt, actually. And so the water vapor forms around that. Eventually it gets heavy enough and then falls to the surface of rain. So when that happens, we're talking really small amounts of rain. In fact, scientists have been debating for decades whether or not this is actually very effective to do. So even when it does work, Gotti, we're not talking about a lot of rain, certainly not the amount of rain that they saw in Texas last week.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to The Art of Projection. This is how they project onto you and I the very thing that they're doing. You know, he's basically saying that, you know, we can cause a little bit of rain, but we certainly can't cause the flooding that took place in Texas. Well, who caused the flooding? And how is it the flooding happened in such a way where so many people lost lives? Are you blaming it on God? You're blaming it on humans? Who caused it? And keep in mind, guys, you're listening to the CEO of a gentleman who says that his company is able to create rain. For years, they told us that they couldn't do this. They didn't have the technology to do it. But now it's coming out in the news that they're able to do it. And they're saying, well, we can only do a little bit. Of course, we can't do the amount of rain or storming that took place in Texas. We can only help the farmers just a little bit. Do they really think that we're dumb enough to believe this? Of course they're able to do it.
And the timing of it, 2 days before, I mean, you know, again, anybody online that seems to be an expert these days would say, well, no, this is what, you know, started the flood or possibly like supercharged the soil so it was hydrophobic. Like, take us through the timeline here.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Gotti, because this cloud seeding, it works within like 15 minutes, half an hour, maybe an hour, and then that's it. So that was done 2 days before. So the CEO is saying this other scientific research establishes that cloud seeding isn't going to trigger something like this, certainly not 2 days after they were doing it. They were only up in the air cloud seeding for about 20 minutes because, again, it's targeted to a pretty small area of land, which was not even over where the worst of this flooding was, Gotti. So we're talking 30 minutes to an hour, certainly not 2 days in advance.
Okay, guys, let's get the narrative correctly. He said, of course they can't make the storm amount of rain that took place in Texas, but they can do a little bit to help the farmers. And then he said, they can only do it 2 days, or in this case, they only did it 2 days before the storm, and it only lasts for 30 minutes, right? And then it's only localized. They can only do like one farm at a time, I mean, do they really think that we're dumb enough to believe this? This is ridiculous. The fact that they come on and admit this and then sit up and deny it tells us who the real liars are. They are. We can't fly planes up in the sky and I can't do that. If I were able to fly a plane anywhere and drop something on people, of course I'd go to jail, but they can do it and get away with it and call it cloud seeding. And we're not supposed to attribute it to any flooding, what's taking place in Texas. Ridiculous.
And cloud seeding is human-caused climate change on a very micro level. But when we're talking about climate change on the macro level, does it look like this flood has any links to climate change?
The kind of apples and oranges here, right? Because cloud seeding is like weather modification, like very hyper local in the moment. Climate change is over a long period of time. And what humans have been doing by burning coal, oil, and gas is that we're making the atmosphere hotter. We're making the oceans hotter. But the hotter we make our atmosphere, it holds more moisture. I mean, that's just basic physics that we've known about for about 200 years. So the climate deniers say, oh, no, there's no way this is possible. But it's actually just basic physics dating back to the 1820s. The hotter we make the atmosphere, the more moisture it holds, and that comes down unevenly. So this group of scientists out of Europe did what's called a rapid attribution report, and they found that this storm was up to 7% wetter. It dumped up to 7% more rain because of climate change, because of those atmospheric physics, again, Gotti, that we've known about for 2 centuries. This is not some new conspiracy theory. This is just basic science.
Yeah, 7% becomes massive when you're looking at going from like 1 foot to 34 feet in a matter of 24 hours. Chase Kane, really appreciate your expertise in all of this. Thank you so much.
I've always had the question, why is Hawaii burning? Why did Hawaii burn? Those of you that know, Hawaii is an island, right? Right next to a body of water, the ocean. And you think of the Lahaina fire that burned there. I mean, structures burn, cars burn right next to the water. In fact, a number of boats actually burned out on the water. Look at all the cars that are burned right next to the water. If they're able to do localized cloud seeding and cause it to rain, how come they didn't cause it to rain in Hawaii and put out the fire? Not only was there no water in the entire town of Lahaina, but they couldn't do the cloud seeding there, obviously. They had the technology, but they couldn't do it. I mean, imagine this guy who's the CEO of Rainmaker could have been a very wealthy and a very well-appreciated person if he would have just caused it to rain in Hawaii. And keep in mind, remember, guys, I mean, this happened right next to the ocean. I mean, look at this picture. I mean, you could have gone down to Harbor Freight and bought a pump and threw it out in the ocean and put the fire out. It just is ridiculous, the fact that they didn't have any water in the fire hydrants. And they're right next to the ocean, right? And then you have this cloud seeding technology that we all are told it's available, it's real, but they couldn't cause it to rain in Lahaina, in Hawaii. I believe that it's very obvious and very clear. This is not about the natural disasters. And in the upcoming videos after this, I'm going to try to unpack this because it's not about the disaster that's happening, the flooding in Texas or the fires in Lahaina. It's really about what happens after the event, after the flooding, after the fire, where you hear the stories about the missing children. That's where the real smoking gun is, because it's not about the event. It's about what comes up missing after the event.